Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sign Your Own Permission Slip podcast. I'm your host, Anna Fishman, and we have an amazing guest today, Megan Turner. Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to chat with you all the things, being honest, because that's our topic today, permission to be honest. Maybe a little bit of a different type of conversation than we usually have, but stay on, guys. Like, continue listening, you'll understand what we mean. So, Megan, before we jump into the honesty pool, if you will, tell us a little bit who Megan is and why we're chatting about this.
Sure. So I'm Megan Turner. I am a video producer and a digital content creator. And I have actually met Anna because I've worked with her before. We've produced some incredible video. I've traveled with her, halfway across the world. And I'm really excited. There's a lot of different facets to honesty that I've particularly been exploring in the past 3 years, I think. So I'm excited to talk about the personal development that has led to and the freedom that it's led to.
Absolutely. And I love that we both are honest enough with ourselves and have the courage to talk about these topics that we will touch today. But before we get all like deep and serious, I do want to talk about our fun time in Italy together because I had the guts to hire you and your partner to bring you both to Puglia with me a couple of years ago and have you shoot like our entire Puglia foodie experience, which to me is still probably the craziest, most like, oh my God, I did that things.
Yes, same. That was such a leap. And oh my gosh, what an incredible experience. I think that was also a leap. So on the one hand, that was such a big investment, right?
Yeah.
In the trips, in the power of video and that leap of faith to say, we're gonna do this, we're gonna make it happen, it's gonna be amazing. And I think too, for me, if we can be honest, right? It was a leap for me because I had never done anything that expansive before. And I was so excited, but also there was so much fear. Anytime you do something big like that, there's the will we get it? Will something cataclysmic happen? And the chip with all the footage at the end of the trip will get stolen or lost or something. And then God forbid, So I think, there was that huge leap of faith, but oh my gosh, was it worth it? Like, just such a incredible experience. I think not only to travel with you and witness firsthand these kind of trips, which are just life-changing, but also to see the impact that it had on the other people on the trip
Yeah.
and to see their journey from showing up and not knowing each other for the most part. It was a group of strangers
Yeah.
and that how's this going to go, to at the end of the trip being like heartbroken that we had to leave, and not just leave Italy but leave each other.
Yeah.
That the friendships we created and the experiences we had together, the beautiful, funny, unusual experiences, all those special moments that you can't even imagine sitting down with a real grandma in Italy and having her dinner, and you can't speak to her because she doesn't speak even Italian but a dialect. That's just wild, just wild. And to capture it, beyond that, to capture it all on video was just so incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it so well. There's so many facets to this. So first is me giving myself permission to like do this crazy thing and this is why this whole podcast came about because we as women don't give ourselves permission to do a lot of things. We just like follow the rules and stay within the lines and coloring within the lines. And I remember that I was talking to my business coach, Sarah, and I said, Sarah, I feel like I'm Oprah. I'm like, you get a trip and you get a trip. I'm like, who the hell am I? What am I doing? This is like the biggest investment in my business. Like I've never spent so much money. I've never like relied so much on anybody else because I was bringing I usually lead with my gut and I had a good feeling about you, but I didn't know your partner at all.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I was like, I want to make this happen, but also like I learned to trust my intuition and like lean in into my gut because when we started working together, this was not supposed to happen like that. Like you were not
Oh,
supposed to come with me to Italy. You were like you were coming to my area, my neck of the woods in New Jersey, and I'm like, oh, stop by my office and we'll shoot like this video business card introduction thing. And then COVID happened, and I'm like, all
yeah.
into shit. Um,
The only good thing COVID ever did. So,
right. But then I was like, oh, and we were trying to like figure out like, do I come down to Raleigh? Do like you come up to New York? And I was like, we going to Italy in October. Why don't we just go to Italy and shoot it there? And once this idea came to my mind, like I was so determined to make it happen. Like nothing was gonna stop in my way. Like we spent so much time back and forth and crunching the numbers and figuring out like because we were both committed. But we gave ourselves permission. Like I gave myself permission to make it happen, and you gave yourself permission to make it happen.
yeah.
And this is just like the beauty of stepping out of your comfort zone, giving
Mhm.
yourself permission, not doubting, like just leaning in. I want to inspire women who watch this and listen to this podcast. Like, no idea is crazy. Like, I never thought I'm going to be able to bring two professional videographers with me on a small group. Like, I never even thought I'd be able to do this business. And now look at us, like 10 years into it, like we're bringing groups of women all around Europe and have these incredible life-changing experience. You said it so well. Like seeing how life-changing travel is. Like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love doing family vacations for clients and honeymoons and all of that. And I send them the itinerary and they send me sometimes pictures back and I like, oh, I know what they're doing here. Like but being with a group of people there and seeing it with your own eyes, like how their eyes light up, how like their taste buds light up when they taste like that Baresi focaccia that we were eating with like the oil dripping down our.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that focaccia on like every episode of this podcast. People are like, enough already, we got it. Like, but it
I try to find burrata here and it's just not the same. It's
no,
just not the same.
nope. Not
Yeah.
the same. Not the same. And like having all those experiences, and I know a lot of women that come on the trip are like or consider coming on the trip, like they're like, I've never done this before. I don't know anyone. This is scary. How do I do this? But we hold you by the hand the entire process before and during. And we had like when the trip that you came on, I think that was like the most diverse group. I think we were like from 29 to like 75. And we
Yeah.
it was like eight of us, but we all got along so well. We had fun. We were like open-minded and sharing the experience. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about like that, like how the
Yeah.
diversity and inclusion type of thing?
Yeah, no, it was such a fascinating experience because I was one of the youngest people there, me and my partner who's just an incredible cinematographer and just the way that these women opened up to us and they included us and we included them and it was just I think especially because it was such a small group, there was the ability to get to know each person, right? Well, not I, my mother and my grandmother have been on group trips before. And there are pros and cons and things, but they went on, one of those like bus trips and one of their, complaints in those situations was not getting to know everybody, right? And the fact that, it was catered really to young people. And I think in our situation, it was fascinating because it wasn't just that it was small, but because it was so personal. It was so personalized. And like, there were moments where it was like, okay, are we tired? Do we want to go back, and rest, or do we want to go on and do this other thing? And there was that sensitivity to caring what each other needed. And you can't do that when it's like 20 or
Yeah.
30 people, right? You can't, there's just too many people for it. But I think that sensitivity and it's a mindset shift from how do I squeeze as much, experience out of this trip as I possibly can and get my money's worth
Yeah.
versus like I'm here. We're here together. We're present in this moment. We're not thinking about what we're doing tomorrow. We're here on a beach eating gelato, right? This is what we're doing together right now and we're in that moment together. And I think even coming from completely different places, completely different walks of life, completely different life experiences and age ranges and stuff. Um, being there in that moment, being able to share it with somebody else and open up and talk about like even deep things, right? I never would have thought about, talking the conversations that we had about life, about food and work and the meaning of life and these things that you can do when you get past that. I think like I don't know if desperation is the right word, but that, your head is in the details. You're trying to make sure you don't miss anything. But when you're on these trips, when you're, especially the experience that I had, you don't have to think about those things. So you can focus on just being there and really, really actually just being present and not anxious. And I think that opened the door for so many beautiful conversations and beautiful experiences with those lovely ladies that I miss so much.
That's that's so true. And I think our group experience there in Italy was so life-changing for me too, because that was my first big success trip. I've had a few trips before and I'm not gonna lie, not every group gels that well. Like we review everyone, we kind of like, pre-screen everyone, and everyone individually is usually really amazing that comes on the trip. Not every time when they're all put together, there's that chemistry.
Yeah.
And that trip where we went together, we that was my first trip where we had an amazing chemistry, and we had several trips after to different places with really good chemistry. But that's the trip when I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. That's
Yeah.
the trip that I realized I'm like, oh, maybe my crazy convoluted journey through corporate and starting the business and everything led me here for a reason, because maybe this is what I'm supposed to do when I grow up. Like it was so like eye-opening and life-changing for me, but I would never have gotten to that point if I didn't give myself permission to be honest with myself when I was in corporate, to be honest with myself how unhappy I was, to be honest with myself when I was like making every single decision and like doing things that no one ever did, like bringing videographers with me to Italy. They're
Yeah.
like, you're doing what? I'm like, yeah, that feels right. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and because even there was this huge chance that the other people on the trip wouldn't be comfortable around us,
yeah,
right? That
yeah,
was such a huge risk. And the ability to be there and be with each other without it feeling like you're on a reality show, that was beautiful that it turned out so well and people were so kind and open. But yeah, I mean it was a huge risk. And I think so the videography company that you hire, I don't want to be specific about that.
yeah.
I started in 2018 and called Poppy Plum Media. And I started it literally, I made the decision to start it the day before my daughter was born. And it was such an incredible experience because I had planned to go back to my part-time job that I was at when I was pregnant. And my friends called me. They were going to watch her after she was born. They called me the day before she was born and they said, look, I am so, so sorry, but we've waited. We finally made a decision. We're moving across the country in the summer, and it's May. And I said, I understand that. Okay, all right. And so I had to go in the day my daughter was born. I went into my boss at work and said, look, I know I swore up and down for 9 months that I'm not leaving because I didn't want to leave, but I don't have a choice now. And so I stayed home and had to bring in additional income. And that was, what led to Poppy Plum Media being created. But having that honesty to say, like, all right, this is where we are. We can't pretend like, well, we'll just bootstrap it, we'll figure it out, right? Like being honest about where you're at for me led to being able to do things I never thought that I could do. I never, never thought that I could start a
Yeah.
business. Certainly not a business that would grow to have like a team of 10 to send me halfway across the world. That never would have entered my mind. And without having that moment of painful honesty, we would never have gotten there. So,
That's
mic drop.
yeah, no, like it caught me, like, made me hold my breath for a second because I'm trying to like really feel it, and like I think that was you had incredible bravery to be honest with yourself to do this. because this theme comes back in the podcast, in my other conversations with clients, with family, with friends. A lot of times we're just complacent with being unhappy. With we do what we have to do with color inside the lines because that's what we're supposed to do. And we don't want to rock the boat because visibly everything on paper is great and you have to do what you have to do. And like to admit that you're not happy and you're actually going to do something about it. So many people out there are not happy and they're just complaining that they're not happy. So many people tell me like, "Oh, I wish I knew you're going to Italy. I would have come with you." Yeah, but I only been doing this for like group trips for only like 5 years now, and I talk about it every single day. And I
Yeah.
see you once a month at these networking breakfasts, and you tell me every single time, like, you just like not giving yourself permission to either do something about it or admit that you're never gonna do something about it. It's like
Yeah.
when I say, oh, one day I'm gonna go to the gym. No, I will not. Unless I say I'm gonna go on Monday or I'm gonna go 3 months from now. If you tell me one day you're gonna go to Italy, sorry to break it, friend, to you that you're not gonna go to Italy. If you're telling me you're gonna go in 5 years because you need to save money, because you're sending your kid to college, because whatever, like then you have a plan. But if you're just like complaining and wishing and just like saying stuff for like to make yourself feel better, it will never happen. Let's get honest. Like this is what this conversation is about. Be honest with yourself. Either admit that you don't really care about Italy that much and don't want to go, and that's fine. You don't have to. Maybe you have a dream of doing something else. Maybe you have a dream of saving up and buying a new house or new car or whatever that dream may be. But if you really want to make it to Italy, stop telling yourself one day. Put that on the calendar 3 days from now or 3 years from now and make it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, hand in hand with that is this idea that everything that you say yes to, you're saying no to something else, right? And so
Yeah,
if you don't choose to say, this is my priority, I'm going to say yes to this, and I'm intentionally going to say no to these other things, then you're never like, it's a beautiful idea that one day you might go to Italy or start a business or start a family or whatever. Those are beautiful ideas, but until you say, yes, this is my priority, and to get to that, here's what I'm going to say no to,
yeah,
right? And that's a hard truth for a lot of people because a bird in the hand, you don't want to give up anything that you have for fear of what it could become, but at the same time, you can't do all the things all the time. You have to pick which you're going to do and do them intentionally. And
yeah.
that's a hard place to be when you're picking. It's a really hard place to be, but it's great because of what it leads to.
Right. It's a commitment. You have to make a choice and commit to that and not have buyer's remorse, not like doubt yourself. But you know what? Not picking is also picking. Like when you're not making a decision, that's also a decision. Like if you're not going to choose one or the other, life is going to choose for you. Like circumstances will choose for you. Your bank account will choose for you.
Yes, every time.
Like shut it down, like make it like stop talking and like you be in control. You make that decision and then you like work around that and make it happen because like I really love what our coach said the other day. Well, she's been saying it a lot, but it kind of finally synced in. It's like everything that you buy in the store, from a pen to a Tesla, like from something that's very cheap to something that's very advanced, did not exist at some point in life in the universe. It did not exist. So someone created that and made it happen, and other people are buying it. So when you have an idea and you're like, oh, who would ever like go with me to it or whatever, like whatever idea you
Mhm.
have the trust in yourself. Like if you have the passion for it, you people will see your passion, people will follow you. If you're faking it, it's not gonna work. Like
Oh,
I
every time.
like I don't do like wine tours of Italy because I'm not that big of a wine connoisseur. So I'm
Mhm.
not gonna fake my passion for wine when I don't have one. But I
Yeah.
certainly have passion for Venice and I certainly have passion for shopping in Italy. So I'm like, I don't have to fake that. Like you just need to like listen to your heart and again, be honest with yourself.
Yeah. And the minute that you start straying into that fake territory, you can feel it.
Yeah.
There were a lot of pieces of content that I put out, right, as entrepreneur
Yeah.
and all this stuff, right, where I talked about things that I really, really cared about. And if you watch those videos side by side with the ones where it was like, I was told I need to talk about this because this is relevant and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
you can tell the difference. You can tell it. It's so, so cringy. But you can feel it too when you start kind of moving into an area that you're like, I feel like I should do this. And the reality is that you shouldn't. My counselor has told me this. You shouldn't should on yourself,
Yeah.
right? Don't should on yourself. Like whenever you start like wading into that territory, it's time to come back and say like, okay, maybe that's what other people think I should do, but what do I intuitively feel that I should do, right? And make that choice because if you're halfway in, it's very obvious,
Yeah.
if you're faking it, it's very obvious.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to pivot the conversation a little bit and talk about physical health and mental health. I know you struggled with something very rare and unusual, and you came like face to face with it right after our trip to Puglia. Do you mind sharing with us your
Sure.
experience?
Yeah, I think that maybe my life is a magnet for strange experiences that happen all at once like this. I don't know why, but yes. So I had COVID back in February of 2022, which was the year that we went to
Yeah.
Puglia that October. And after I had COVID, I got better, and the whole rest of the year I was off. Everything was weird. My heart would race unexpectedly. I would get
Because you
dizzy.
were not in Italy. That's why everything was
I
weird.
know, that's what it was. That's what it was. It was there's so much anxiety, like additional anxiety that I was not used to. And I went through all this testing to figure out what it was and couldn't figure it out. I was very worried actually about Italy, about how would I do? We were going to be so physically active and I had been so fatigued. Would I be able to do it? And amazing enough, I don't know if this is a shameless plug for Puglia or not, but amazingly enough, I felt great in Puglia. Everything was wonderful. I felt like a normal human being and it was just incredible. I remember saying something to one of the other ladies on the trip about this near the end, and she said, oh, it's the wine. You just need a glass of good wine a day. And I was like, I mean, there's an idea there,
Yeah.
but
There's something to it.
there's something to that. Yeah. But so we came back, we got back stateside on a Monday. And that Friday, I had what's called a tilt table test, which is a test that they do. It's like a torture device, it's terrible. But it's a test for what's called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which
God,
is
that's a
a
mouthful.
mouthful. But it's a form of dysautonomia, which is autonomic dysfunction. So it's to do with your nervous system. And apparently, a lot of people like me, have been developing these symptoms of dysautonomia, having had COVID, and these things are being presented. They don't think COVID caused it, but it's one of those things that could have been underlying and then it got triggered by something. Could also be caused by many different things.
Right.
So they did the test and I didn't pass out, which usually is what I heard happens if you have POTS. I didn't pass out, so I thought it was good. And they leaned me back down and they're like, you okay? And yeah, I'm all right. They were like, all right, I thought we were gonna have to wheel you over to the ER there for a second, and they were like, your numbers went way, way up. And so technically the barrier for a diagnosis is that your heart rate must increase more than 30 beats per minute when you go from laying to standing. And so mine did that. And so they diagnosed me on the spot with POTS. And it was a relief in one aspect, right? To have the truth, right? To know what it is, what's wrong with me. I'm not crazy. This is not all in my head. There's something actually wrong with my body. But then also, it was so, so heavy of a reality to face, to be honest with myself and say, what does this mean for my life, for everything now? Because some days when I'm in Puglia, I feel great. I could, run, I could dance, I could sing. It's fantastic. And other days, it's a challenge for me to go from the bed to the living room to work on my laptop, just depending on the day. And now that was 3 years ago, right? So now we're understanding a bit more about like what are the things that trigger that? How can we cope with that? But the reality of it, the honesty here is that there is no treatment for this. It doesn't go away. This is the rest of my life. Um, and I'm incredibly grateful because I know people who have much more severe cases than I do. But it still is a huge life change. And so things like being on set, the idea that I could wake up on any morning and be able to be on set physically is not a given anymore. So from that time, I started having to think about my physical limitations, my mental health limitations, because the anxiety was one of my biggest symptoms of POTS. And how do we handle that? I was already seeing a counselor, so it was easy to continue with her and talk about how does this change how we're approaching care, but also, since there's no treatment, there's a lot of, treatments for the symptoms. And then, going through and trying all of those things, going through that process of seeing, what works for one person doesn't work for another. What works for me now might not work for me next year.
Right.
Um, it was a huge life change that I didn't want, I didn't ask for, But I think the biggest reality check there was, and this took months to honestly years for me to really come to terms with it, was the fact that entrepreneurship did not serve this body in this season of life. Um, and that's hard. If you're an entrepreneur listening to this, it's hard because there's so much passion behind what we do, and especially passion when you've built a business for years, right? Poppy Plum Media was 7 years this June. And that was one of the things, by the time you're hearing this, it will be public knowledge, but I've already reached out and told clients that we're officially closing the business. And that is a really challenging thing to admit, right? To be honest with yourself, to say that, okay, I'm choosing, my physical health, my mental health over, what I've been doing, what I've enjoyed doing for this season. And I'm saying, okay, we need to optimize for self-care rather than ambition in this moment. And that's really hard to be honest about. And that's why it takes so long to be honest about it. I think it took me um, at least 6 to 9 months to start looking for other supplemental work. And then in 2024, I actually took a role at Fidelity Investments. And so that's a full-time role, and I've transitioned into that fully at this point. And so I think, the harder the truth is, the longer it takes to be able to be honest with yourself about it. But if you can get to that point of being willing to be honest with yourself, there's so much freedom and care and joy in that because, you know, we're not looking at this as if, it's the business failed, right? That's not what happened here.
Wow.
What happened here was a choice to say, we've built this beautiful thing and we're grateful for it. And we could kind of Marie Kondo a little bit, right? It sparks joy.
Yeah.
We're so thankful and we can thank it and we can do what we need to do to take care of ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so honest and so powerful and so inspiring because as an entrepreneur, I can understand how hard it is to, well, any change is hard, but this kind of change to accept that now for the rest of your life you have this thing and you need to figure out how to live with it because you can't do anything about it. So you need to like manage it and then to adjust your life to this, that's a big step. But also what is an even bigger step is like you choosing yourself. You're not choosing your business. You're not choosing the money. You're not choosing the career, the flashy trips to Italy that come
I
with,
still want to go to Italy.
yeah. No, I mean like the work trips
Yeah.
to like all
Right,
the
right.
that would come with this business. You're like, that's nice to have, but I want to have my life and I want to have my health and be there for my kids and my family, and I'm gonna do that. And that's hard truth. And a lot of times people may understand it, but may not make that choice, or may work themselves into a situation where they are like physically cannot do the job anymore and then have to make that choice. So for you to like consciously face it, realize it, understand it, and then make that choice, that's really brave and really honest with your being honest with yourself. So congrats for that. Amazing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think, it's a journey. I think the first time that it occurred to me that I might not be able to continue doing Poppy Plum or continue doing it the way that I had been doing it. I literally remember I was laying down on the floor in my office with my feet, propped up against the wall because blood circulation. And I just laid there and I just wept because it's so hard. It's so hard. But then you see people who don't listen to that truth, right? And they work themselves until they have a heart attack or they have a serious anxiety disorder or depression or, and these things that, if we're able to address them and be honest about them, we can handle it. But if we refuse to listen to that hard truth, then we can really, really hurt ourselves. And that was the thing that I knew. And I had so much support, especially from my husband, who, I wouldn't have started the business without his support. And now I wouldn't be closing the business without his support. To have somebody or multiple somebodies in your corner who are able to hear that hard truth with you and encourage you, even though it's a lot. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's been a long journey, and I think, 3 years after diagnosis, 3 years after, probably the biggest project that I ever did.
Yeah.
Um,
Biggest project yet.
yeah, yeah, it's a grief process, right? And I feel like we're finally there to acceptance, and it's okay that that's not linear and that takes a while.
Yeah. Amazing. Absolutely amazing story. That's why I wanted to bring this story to light. I obviously heard the story before and I knew it, and I was like, more people need to hear this. Like more women need to hear this, because not everything that may sound and feel like final is that final. Like you can get out of it, you can figure out the new life, and you just need to be honest with yourself and not be afraid to like lean in into whatever life throws at you and make the most out of it. So I know that you're closing this chapter, but I'm sure you have a lot more new chapters that are about to open. Do you care to share with us what's next for you?
Oh, what's next? There is a really exciting chapter coming for us. There's not a lot that I can say about it yet, but I think the beauty is in close. It's kind of what we said before, right? In saying no to something, you're able to say yes to something. And now that excitement again of saying, what if? What if this? What if that? And those things for me include finding location wise, because we have certainly been looking for a while at moving, a location that suits our family and my medical needs and the lifestyle that we want, which, candidly, I think having this distance now from entrepreneurship, it's given me so much time and space to reflect on the ways in which I was pursuing entrepreneurship, which were not healthy. There's so much importance in the way we're pursuing that as well. And so having that distance and space to say, what lifestyle am I looking for? Am I looking for one where, we're all about these deadlines? Or am I looking for something that gives me space to breathe and make a really good complicated cup of coffee in the morning, right? That takes me like 15 minutes to make, but it's so delicious. That's one thing that I've added into my life. And savoring those things has become so valuable for me because so much of it was rushed along before. Um,
Yeah.
so I think what's next for us is going to be really exciting. You're going to want to follow along. As always, because even when I rest, I know you've said this, my counselor and other friends have said this, they're like, "Oh, I'm not surprised at all. There are big things because I can't not do big
Of course.
things.
Of
But
course.
the way in which I pursue the next chapter is at least striving to be one of patience and mindfulness. And that's actually what I've established for this year is going to be my focus is developing that patience and savoring it. So I hope that's cryptic enough for everybody.
Yeah, I was like, now I'm like, okay, where do we follow along? Where, like, if
Yeah,
obviously I know where to find you, but like for everybody else listening, if anybody who wants to maybe chat with you more about maybe they're in a similar situation, maybe they're just curious to follow your next chapter, where can they find you?
sure. I think the best place to find me is on Instagram, and
Okay.
it's at the Megan Turner
Okay.
because I needed a the in front of my name.
Yeah.
So
Why not? You deserve
the
it.
Megan Turner.
And we'll put the link to that in our show notes. So if anyone, I'm totally pimping you out. I'm like, if anyone wants to talk to Megan, they
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have had so many people, especially in the past couple months, ask me, especially about having POTS or having a family member with POTS. And there's so little information out there about this. Like, I am 100% an open book. I would love to talk more about that experience because it's a long journey. It's a long journey, and you need community. So,
Thank you, Megan. That's really generous of you. And I really appreciate your time coming in the podcast and being honest and open with us and sharing this. I sure do hope you'll come on one of our Italy or other trips soon. I know we're gonna have a blast again. And good luck with all of your future plans and endeavors. Thank you again.
thank you.